All right, so we're very excited, and I mean it. We got to know Tom really well last night and yesterday. Tom Deans is the author of 3 books on business succession planning, generational wealth transitions. The second of his book, Family Wealth Trilogy, so there's a trilogy of them, and the second of that trilogy is Willing Wisdom, and that's on your table. You are receiving that today complimentary from Prairie Family Business. These books push the boundaries of conventional wisdom and remind everyone that there is so much more to estate planning than just clever tax plans. So please give a warm welcome for Tom Deans. All right.
Hi, sir. Oh, anytime you can start a speech with a little Will Smith getting jiggy with it. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good day. Hey, a quick show of hands. How many people heard me last year talk about estate planning and, generally putting the fun back in funeral? Quick show of hands. Okay. Good stuff. So there's going to be a little crossover. There's a lot of people, obviously, who haven't heard me speak. I want to get them caught up. We have a lot of ground to cover. 3 books. All 3 of my books are dealing with the transition of family wealth. Be that in the form of a family business, be that in the form of investments, real estate. Listen, we're in the middle of the greatest wealth transition in the history of this country. It is mind-boggling. Today, $3 billion, that's billion with a B, $3 billion will be inherited today. Tomorrow, Saturdays and Sundays, $3 billion, $3 billion, $3 billion, $3 billion. Trillions of dollars are moving between the generations, and frankly, it's not going well. It is not going well. The courts are full of families in dispute. Families fighting over farms, over operating businesses, vacation homes. Now, why would that be? Last year when I came here, I told you that 126 million American adults are missing the most important document in an estate plan. And what is that? That's a will. Bad news is, a year later, it's 128 million. My wife has suggested that I stop doing this. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. More money is transitioning and we're writing fewer and fewer wills. It's an interesting moment in time, trying to figure out why that is. A lot of research is showing there's why people are stuck on this issue, why they're not doing basic planning. And the number one issue, I thought it would be cost. There's a lot of people who have built really impressive family businesses worth $5, $10, $50, $500 million. And I thought maybe cost is the barrier to estate planning. It does cost upwards of $1,500, $2,000 for a will. So you wouldn't want to do that to protect that $40 million business. Half of all business owners in this city, half of all business owners in this state, half of all business owners in this country do not have a will. Half. Half of all lawyers in this city don't. Quick show of hands. How many lawyers in the room? Got a couple? Half of all lawyers in America don't have a will. 4 U.S. presidents died without a will. 2 were lawyers. We're not talking about advanced estate planning. We are talking about the basics that are missing. Now, if you're a business owner and you don't have a will, what happens? The state that you reside in, don't worry. The government has got you covered. It's going to be great because they have a nifty little formula lurking in the background that is going to divide your family business according to that state formula. So imagine you die and you have no will. Most state formulas are going to take that business and transition it to a surviving spouse. Women in this country live on average 6 years longer than men. Why is that so funny? You should be nervous. You should be very nervous. Women are the first inheritors, statistically. Now, in many cases, they have operational knowledge of the business, but in many cases, they don't. Sure, they may know the key employees, but they don't know the lenders. They don't know the suppliers. They don't know where the contracts and the leases are stored. What has taken decades to build wealth when a business owner guy dies and that business transitions to a surviving spouse, it is remarkable how much wealth is destroyed in the modern economy when there is a will, even if there is no will, when that scenario has not been played out. I get more phone calls from elderly women whose business owner husbands have predeceased them, and did you know what they tell me? They want to bring their husband back from the dead and kill them themselves. They are not happy. They are not happy. They now have a decision to make. Continue to run that business or go to the oldest page in the playbook, which is, I'll give you a hint. Do nothing. Silence is the great destroyer of American family businesses. It's not families that learn from that broken estate plan. When dad dies, it's mothers who are then thrust into that position and they have this kind of paralysis. They're kind of at this fork in the road where they want to preserve their husband's legacy, or they don't know what to do. They're ill-equipped, or even worse, they've got family members. Maybe one's in the business, maybe one's outside the business, and they're thrust into the position of having to decide how that business will move forward in time. That is a stressful moment. That stress, we know, compromises immune systems, and often women die at their desk with that family business and that transition plan unresolved. Then what happens? Now the shares in that business come down to the children. Again, half the time, there's still no will. Now we're going to thrust, according to those state formula, we're going to thrust children into business together as equal business partner. What's that look like on Monday? What do the children outside the business want from their brother or sister inside the business? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with funny. Yeah, they want money. They want it quick. Where do they go for cash to pay out their brothers and sisters? They reach into the operating business. Most cases, it's not kicking off enough free cash flow. They impair the business, and the business fails. Whether the survival rate of family businesses is 30%, that's the generally quoted data. Whether it's 35% or 25%, who knows? But we do know it's less than 50% survival rate. Of that 30%, let's go with the 30% number, that make it to the second generation, only 10% will make it to the third generation. So stated differently, if you're a founder, you've got a 3% chance of your grandchildren owning and operating your business. If you love to gamble, you do not need to go to Vegas. Just get up in the morning, hop in your car, drive to your office. You're in the biggest casino of your life. It's called your business. And you're gambling with house money. A lot of house money. Why? Because I know what you do. I know what you're doing. I do it, and I know better. My father did it. He had a family business. I ran that for 8 years as CEO. My grandfather did it. And my great-grandfather, who had a different business, did the same thing. What do entrepreneurs and founders do when they finally turn a profit? Do they pull it out and buy a Porsche? What do they do? Come on. They pump it back in. They don't do that for 1 year. They do that for 10 years. They do that for 30 years. They do that over and over and over. And they build a business that is self-funded. They fund their own capital expansions, their own inventory, their own receivables. They become their own lenders. They have under-leveraged balance sheets. These are fun businesses to run. Really smart way of actually creating generational wealth. It's a really smart plan to double down on a business that you know. It's a well-detailed plan that works pretty well for people in their 20s and 30s and 40s. Now, you move into your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, and your 90s, and you've got 80% of your wealth in one stock called your family business. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you're 75 years old. And you've got 80% of your wealth in your operating business with no plan, no succession plan, no will. What's that feel like? And then, of course, you turn to the literature and you read books on family businesses and you read them all looking for that special little wisdom to help you get that business transition into the next generation. Because all of that literature says the same thing, the same narrative, the same storyline, that if you fail to transition that business into the hands of the next generation, somehow you have failed. You failed yourself, you failed your family, you failed your employees, you failed your community, you're a single generation family business, you have failed, says the literature. I don't think anything could be further from the truth. And I'll tell you why. I want to share a very, very brief story. My family business starts in the 1920s, great-grandfather, tire distribution business. My grandfather works with my great-grandfather. He doesn't love it. He inherits. The business gets sold. He inherits. He's a chemist. He starts a business, big business. My father works in that business. He doesn't love it. It gets sold. My father inherits. He starts a plastics company in 1973. That's the business that I joined at the age of 37, first having a career in banking. Now I get the phone call. You want to take it over? I do. I take over the management of that business. That's the business that we sold on February 8th, 2007. Does anyone see a pattern in our family, aside from the fact that we can't keep a job? We start them. We involve our family. We scale them. In the fullness of time, if the next generation does not want to risk their capital and buy that business at full market value based on a third-party valuation, we don't get all weepy. We sell that business. And it's usually at this point in my speech where the next gens in the room are like, oh my God, who invited this idiot? Oh my, I hope he doesn't read that book. I hope Dad doesn't find that book and read that book. I thought I was going to get that business for free. You see, death has always been the triggering event for the intergenerational transition of a business. We just simply had to wait for someone to die. And that was that moment in time when that business would transition. Guess what? It's not working. I'll tell you why it's not working. Because business owners are living longer. Business owner would have a heart attack at 72 back in the 1950s. He'd actually die. Now that business owner has a heart attack at 72, gets a stent, runs 4 marathons. Guys are going forever. They are not dying. And what they're doing is they're actually going now to the oldest page in the playbook, which is semi-retire. Semi-retire. Go to Palm Springs, play some golf when the snow flies. Come back in April, drive your kids crazy. Snow flies again, off you go, and kids are like, oh, thank God, let it snow. That little routine now starts around age 68, and it's going for 25, 30 years. Guys aren't dying. And death continues to be the triggering event for the intergenerational transition of a business. It's happening way too late. And often when we're waiting too late, something happens. And it's a big, big new thing. It's a big trend. Estate plans are not being triggered by death. What are they being triggered by? Cognitive decline, loss of mental acuity, powers of attorney for finance being triggered. So children in their 60s or 70s are becoming powers of attorneys for their parents who still have voting control of the business. And they're thrust into a position to make those financial decisions. And there's been no family conversation. It really is that reality that led me to write the third and final book in the trilogy. And I'm done writing. What do you call 4 books? Exactly, there's no word for it. One book too many. The Happy Inheritor, which kind of begs the question, how can you inherit and be unhappy? Oh, read the book. I'll show you exactly how. There are a lot of very unhappy inheritors today. These are people who are inheriting through the laws of intestacy, that is, their parents didn't have a will, or they're inheriting significant assets. Most of that $3 billion that was inherited today is in really hard-to-divide assets. That's not cash they're inheriting. They're inheriting businesses, vacation homes, all sorts of assets that require planning and triggering tax liabilities. There's been no family conversation. Secrecy and silence has continued to punctuate and define the culture of the family. Silence and secrecy. Children arriving at funeral homes. That is ground zero. That is where they're learning about who gets the family business. There's been no conversation. Now, why would that be? I don't know if you know this, but if you tell your children what your estate plan is, it will accelerate your death. Really? Is that your concern? The other concern is if I tell my children what the contents of my will says and they understand that they're going to inherit 50% of a $25 million business, they will immediately drop everything and go and play Xbox for the rest of their lives. It will destroy their drive and ambition. So I push back on that sentiment and I say, if you were to die tomorrow and your estate is revealed, what changes? Why would they not go and play Xbox then? The reality is we often push off and procrastinate on this subject because it involves hard conversations. Hard conversations. Most of the people in this room have never had the conversation that I describe in The Happy Inheritor with their family. Why? Because you've inherited a particular relationship to wealth that is anathema. It's foreign to you. Most of you did not come from money. I would argue that there would be just a handful of people in this room who came from 3 generations of wealth. The vast majority, I mean 95% of these people on one side of your family came from grinding poverty. I don't mean not a lot of money. I mean, where's my next meal coming from? We are so close to that line, that historical line, when someone in our family was grinding poor. And what I really want to remind people in my books is that even though we are wealth creators, we've created businesses and opportunities for the next generation, that line to return back to that abject poverty, you have no idea how fine that line is and how close to that line most of the people in this room are. We are extraordinary at creating wealth. We are absolutely appalling at having family conversations to prepare the rising generation for what is surely coming their way. So why are we struggling with these family conversations? Academics who study families as a system will tell you the central foundational idea of that academic study is that families repeat. You grow up in a family with 2 smokers, there's a higher probability that you'll be a smoker. Not a guarantee, it's statistic, probability. You grow up with a family where 1 or 2 parents are entrepreneurs, higher probability, that's learned behavior. You'll be a risk taker and you'll start a business. We repeat good things in our family history. We repeat challenging things that we've experienced. We repeat. There is a generation of people in this room who are about to practice estate planning exactly the same way that their parents and grandparents approached their estate plan back in the 1940s and 1950s. Remember, 1950, you had 6 kids. And when you died, your estate was worth $14,000. You had 6 or 7 kids fighting over an estate worth $2,000. No one was fighting. No one was lawyering up. You lawyer up over $2,000. Now, we've got smaller families. We don't have 7 kids. We've got 2 kids, and we got $14 million. And all we need is a little bit of a wrinkle. That silence that we've inherited when it comes to our estate plan and communicating our estate plan is causing real ruptures inside families. If there's just a little bit of a wrinkle, it is so easy now for that next gen to lawyer up and fight over a particular asset, over a family business, over a family vacation home. And it's not because they necessarily want that business. They just don't want someone else to have it. You dig the difference? In all 3 of my books, I offer a glimpse into what a facilitated family meeting looks like. This is the biggest trend right now in America. And you're not going to read about it. You're certainly not going to watch a Netflix series on a family that meets quarterly with their trusted advisor with an agenda, with a third party taking minutes, capturing important moments where people agree to do certain things and then action items and then be held accountable. You're not going to watch a miniseries on Netflix where a family gathers annually with their trusted advisor to prepare the rising generation for the $3 billion that's heading their way. No. What are we watching on Netflix? What is the number 1 grossing miniseries in the history of any platform? HBO, Netflix, you name it. The number 1 series Succession. It just blew the doors off of every metric. Why? You go back to the 80s with Dallas, you go into the 90s with Dynasty. Every decade, there is a blockbuster hit where the great unwashed masses love watching people like you who have built risk capital, built something of value, and watch you blow it up. As they sip on their coffee and nibble on their toast, they love watching families like you struggle. Frankly, I think it's getting old. I know what families have to endure to create wealth. I know there's the odd business owner in this room who just, is exceptional and had an easy route to creating wealth. The vast majority of people were like my family: plastics manufacturing, chemical manufacturing, tire distribution, publishing. Man, we're grinders. We quit safe jobs. We risked capital. We had a dream. We built something from nothing, up and down, and wins and losses. And over a period of time, there's been more wins than losses, and we created something. It's hard. To watch business-owning families struggle with the transition, either of the business and or their wealth, for me, feels personal. It feels like there has been a real lost opportunity for families to talk about the unspeakable. For many of you in this room, you can talk about sex with your kids and politics and religion. You can talk about absolutely everything except money. It is literally the last taboo. And often when your kids raise the subject with you about how the business will transition, the voting shares, when, under what conditions, at what price, all at once, a little bit over time, often they're met with a kind of a resistance where you'll say, like, you know what, relax. We got a plan. We've built a plan. You'll find out what it is in good time. Like, it's a kind of an emotional, reflexive response. This is what you've learned. This is what you learned from your parents. Money is rude. You don't talk about it. Where did that come from? Consider this. Imagine you were born in 1940. You turn 18. What happens? You get conscripted into the First World War. Off to Europe you go. You survive the bloody trenches of Europe. You come back to the prairies. What's waiting for you? The Spanish flu, which, by the way, unlike that last pandemic, this one sets its sight on young people, not old people. You survived that, you got 8 good years during the Roaring 20s. Although I was reminded recently by someone that it wasn't that much fun. It was during Prohibition. 1929, the Great Depression starts. It only ends in 1939. Why? Second World War, where another 45 million people lose their life. Listen, if you were born in 1900 and you were lucky enough to see your 45th birthday, you weren't standing around going, gee, I wonder what I'm going to inherit. I wonder what the world owes me. You were absolutely convinced that there was another horrific global event around the corner, and you know what you did? You worked. You worked and you saved. And they had kids. You know what they had? They had baby boomers. There's a lot of baby boomers in this room right now. Baby boomers born between 1948 and 1964. That generation is the most financially successful generation in the planet. And do you know why? Because our parents scared the hell out of us. They told those stories, and they sat us down. And this was a time when we actually had meals with our parents at the same time. And it was over that dinner table where we were taught the importance of hard work and advanced financial concepts like spend less than you make. The power of compounding interest. Our parents didn't leave it to chance that we would trip over these ideas on a hike. No, they taught it, they reinforced it, and we lived it. Well, guess what? The boomers, 1948 to 1964, we're turning 77 this year, and we are loaded. We lived below our means for decades. We could have bought new cars. We drove cars into the ground. We delayed gratification, we deferred consumption, we saved, we invested, because our parents taught us there was another horrific event coming. It largely didn't come. That money, that $3 billion, that's where it came from a generation of workers. In The Happy Inheritor, I talk about a really unique phenomenon that we're experiencing. Workers, boomers, we worked and we framed a relationship to our work. If you ask anyone who works in palliative care and hospice, some medical professional who's dealing with people as they near the end of their life, as they're drawing their last breath, they're not talking about money, I can tell you that. They're talking about relationships. And no one, particularly boomers, as they're drawing their last breath, is saying, boy, I really wish I worked just a little bit harder. Said no one ever. There is a lot of resentment that builds up as boomers reflect back on the choices that they made with the work that they selected, the careers they selected, spending more time on their businesses than they did on their family, on their relationships. And that relationship to our history and relationship to work is framing our relationship to inheritances. There is a kind of built-in resentment, a hard resentment to estate planning. For boomers to imagine that someone will inherit our wealth without the corresponding work and effort has created what clinical psychologists would call a kind of a inner tension, cognitive dissonance, fancy word. It only means this. You have two core beliefs that are in competition with each other, in opposition to each other. Let me give you an example. I love my children. I have worked hard to create wealth. I want them to have my wealth. That's a core belief. It sits right back there. Over here, there's another core belief. I love my children. I want them to have all my wealth. Oh my, I am deeply concerned about them having all my wealth. Both are right. Both are right. That's just one of many examples of the cognitive dissonance that leads to a kind of a paralysis among family business owners. You've worked hard, and now to contemplate how and when this wealth will transition feels a little painful. No one gave you $14 million. No one gave you $7 million. No one gave you $70. You built something from nothing. And now you've created wealth, and it's got to go somewhere. There's only a couple of places it can go. It can go to your family. It can go to the government. I don't know if you know this, but they're super excited about that. It can go to charity. Or you can do the old routine, which is die at your desk, die intestate, leave it to other people to deal with your assets. Make the decisions that you couldn't make. And I'm hard-pressed to imagine how in that latter scenario, people who don't have operational knowledge of your business are going to make good decisions. I don't talk about how to make money. If you're here, you're good at you're really good at creating wealth. Creating wealth, not easy. Transitioning it to the next generation, way harder. Most of you are owner-operators. You spend 99% of your time on your operations, launching new products, improving your margins, getting top-line sales popping. I get it. New distribution. You're also owners. You spend 1% of your time on your ownership. This is completely neglected. This is where the money is made. This is where the money is made. There are people in this room, I with total certainty, you have shareholder agreements, you have a will. They've been drafted by two different lawyers. They say two different things. You want to watch chaos and conflict and litigation? Follow that one. Or you have a shareholder agreement and no will. Or even worse, you've got all of these documents, but you've got them squirreled away in some place that no one can find them. There are people in this room who have wills. You've named an executor. The executor's dead. In 1968, when Bobby Kennedy took a bullet in Los Angeles, pretty horrific event. Good news, he had a will. Bad news is, who do you think his executor was? Yeah, JF. Assassinated 5 years earlier. Bobby Kennedy never updated his will. It wasn't just a lawyer, he was the Attorney General. This subject has eluded some of the most successful professionals, business owners. It is remarkable how really smart, intelligent people, when it comes to the transition, the protection and the transition of family wealth, pull up way short. They pull up way short, and they leave their family in silence and confusion, and most distressingly, with a lack of liquidity. It's a good time to remind you, I'm not selling insurance. I don't sell anything, actually. If you're hearing something today and you're finding it interesting and compelling and you want more, yeah, don't call me. That is not what I do. I write books. This is what I do. I start conversations inside families. I start conversations inside families and advisors. I don't sell consulting services. I don't sell anything except books, and they've already been purchased. You've got one. I am here to remind you that the answer for your family, it's going to be completely different than mine. That's what makes this subject both fascinating and terrifying. It's not easy to commoditize and say, listen, here's the 3 golden rules for transitioning a family business. It doesn't exist. Every family in this room is different. But here's what I do believe, is that the answer is in the room. If you have the courage and the conviction and a real deep interest in protecting your true, authentic legacy. And folks, it's not your business, FYI. Your businesses come and go. Who was the founder of IBM? Exactly. No one knows. We have a whole bunch of young people here, they're not even Googling it. No one cares. Now, I'm not being critical of your businesses. We've got some big businesses in this. You should be very proud of what you created, but trust me, no one is going to remember you 30 years from now and who the founder of your business was. We're about 10 years away from asking a young generation of 20-year-olds who the founder of Microsoft is or Apple, and it will be the same answer. No one knows. No one cares. Of the 100 largest firms in America in the year 1900, do you know that only 16 were still in business in the year 2000? A generation's 25 years. 4 generations? Do you know how much wealth destruction takes place in the modern economy? No one wants to read about it. Certainly no one wants to talk about it. All the great lessons in history are in business failures. What do? We gravitate and we read stories and books about the guy who started a business with $20 and built a billion-dollar company. Like somehow that is all we want to look at. What I want to look at is how that billion-dollar company now transitions to the next generation. Because I know that very few actually will successfully. At the center of my own family's business succession and wealth transition plans resides a very simple concept that I think has allowed our family to really preserve the very first dollar that my great-grandfather made in the 1920s. We still have it. We're Scottish by nature. We're cheap. I sometimes call that parsimonious, but that really is code for cheap. And that is, we ask the rising generation in our family to risk capital. We ask our children if they want to risk their capital and buy our business at full market value, no discounts, no haircuts for the next generation. That's a tough message. And the vast majority of next gens, they may enjoy their job and they may enjoy what has been built, but fundamentally, it is not their dream. And the only way to test that authenticity, that true commitment to their parents' dream, is to ask them to risk capital, put skin in the game, and buy their parents' business. Yes or no. It wasn't very long in my speaking career when I started to share this particular approach that I would get questions like, interesting approach, Tom, generally like it. I have a business worth $50 million. I think my son would buy it. There's only one problem. He's $49.9 million short. Where does the next generation get the cash to buy their parents' business. In our family, that cash came from a couple of different sources. I was buying shares in my father's business 7 years before I joined as an employee. Okay? I borrowed some money from a bank. I took some personal savings, and I accessed some family money. In our family, we transition wealth all the way along our life in the form of living gifts. That's very different from the vast majority of Americans who move into their 80s and 90s and then die, keeping the whole thing secret, and then they die, and the floodgates open, and we leave money to people in their 50s and 60s and 70s who don't need it. Do you know how many people I have met who have inherited millions of dollars in their 70s? And I'm like, first of all, you expect they'd be pretty happy? No, they are unhappy inheritors. You know what they tell me? I wish I had inherited $100,000 25 years ago. A much smaller gift made decades earlier would have changed my life. I would have made very different decisions around healthcare, education, starting businesses. We hoard our wealth to the very end. It's very odd. In our family, we transition wealth all the way along. And so when it comes to our family, including myself with my current business, in our recent family meeting, we asked our two kids, I'm married 37 years, our two kids 33 and 31, asked them recently if they wanted to risk their capital and buy my publishing company. What do you think they said? Actually, they laughed. It was very hurtful. It's super hurtful. They mocked. But they said, no, we're good. They're founders. They have their own dreams. They've started their own businesses, their own investments. They're doing their own thing. Here we go again. Tires, chemicals, plastics, publishing. And we are going to transition our wealth to our children. They will have access to significant wealth. It occurred to me that really what I've been doing over the course of 18 years in 3 books is redefining what a family business is. It's not a building with our name on it. That is a small idea. I think the much bigger and more aspirational idea of a family business is it is a set of values that we transition to the rising generation through storytelling. Storytelling in the confines of facilitated family meetings where we tell the stories about how we created a business, how we created wealth, what worked, and more importantly, what didn't work, where we failed. Our family meetings aren't full of stories about how we picked a stock and made so much money and we're magnificent investors and suck all the oxygen out of the room and leave the rising generation to think, my God, how am I going to ever be as good as Dad? That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing family meetings where they're using that family meeting to slowly relinquish control over their wealth and their business and prepare their heirs and transition wealth and have conversations and introduce them to their investment advisor, sharing the same investment advisor, accounting firm, law firms, building continuity of advice, having a 50-year, 100-year vision for their business and their family money. This is what smart, wealthy families are doing. And you're not going to read about it. And it's happening every single day in this country, and it's exciting work. It's exciting work to watch families really prepare their children not to be as good as them, but to be even better. And by better, I don't mean a version of them, but something different, something where they have access to capital to unlock their true ambitions that aligns with their own unique skills, their own unique dreams. This is what smart dynastic families are doing. Instead of chasing the longevity of one operating business, they're really challenging themselves to pursue the longevity of their wealth and their family relationships. They're using surplus capital to deepen family relationships and trust by having conversations. What kinds of conversations? I've already alluded to one, and that is that conversation about where the last person in your family came from. Real poverty. Do your kids know? I was speaking in New Jersey on Monday, and someone put up their hand and said, my father told a story of how they used the same tea bag 5 times because they couldn't afford coffee. They were dirt poor. And that next generation used that poverty, that ambition to just to climb out of that hole and never return. Well, they climbed out of that hole. This guy has built a big business. And now he's terrified in what he's done. He's created wealth, and now he's stuck. There's nothing in his family history to guide him with the transition of that wealth. Well, I told him how. We all should do this. Find that person in your family that was poor. Resurrect that story. Build it into your culture. Bake it into who you are and what your children are, because we will return there if we let wealth define our relationships. Bring urgency to this subject. I could go for quite some time. I know there's some time restrictions. I'm going to move into a Q&A. All of this to say, please read the book, Willing Wisdom. Don't wait for the movie. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll have 5 minutes.
5? Okay.
And I have one. I have a question for you.
Okay, here we go.
So in this book, like all of your books, you have this conversation with Steve and Ashley, the psychotherapist and the lawyer, and there just happens to be a man named William, which is not very well disguised.
No.
This is your middle name. So this is William having a conversation with Steve and Ashley, and you go through 7 questions that families should ask themselves. Which of those questions do you believe is the most essential that should be asked among families?
Yeah, well, thank you. Did not know that question was coming. Question number 3, I think, really cuts to the chase. The first couple of questions are questions that are backward looking. These 7 questions are the 7 questions we use in our family meeting. Like these are great questions. Before we start asking forward-looking questions to help build a plan, we ask backward-looking questions. But I think one of the most obvious and overlooked question is this: asking our children what they would do with an inheritance. It is so obvious. Are we not curious? Are we not curious what our kids would do with $500,000, $5 million, $50 million? Our kids are educated. Business school, Western degree graduates, business school, smart, hardworking kids. It took them about 5 years. We asked our son that question, and finally, after 5 years, he goes, it occurred to me I can't really answer that question until I know how much I'm going to inherit. I went, bingo, exactly. And that started a conversation about how much wealth we've accumulated, where it is, how we accumulated. And then that led to a much larger conversation about how we can transition wealth in more meaningful ways and what they would do with it. And they wanted to start businesses. Great. Now I'm working for him. I'm his coach. So much fun. Do you know how much our kids have taught us about the changing world, the changing investment landscape? We were invested in NVIDIA long before it became part of our popular discourse. Why? Not me, our son. We always think that if we're old and we got the money, we got the control, we'll do all the wisdom sharing. There's real reciprocity in family meetings that are designed appropriately. There's something in a family meeting for everyone. We're not just answering the question, who gets our stuff when we're dead. Our family meeting goes well beyond that. We're asking questions like, who will provide our care when we lose capacity? Well, there's something for the senior generation. That's a long answer to a very straightforward question. By the way, I apologize. I'm a little over-caffeinated today. I think I had like an extra 2 coffees today. A little bit of a occupational hazard.
2-minute drill then for you, because lunch is next.
Okay.
You talked about living gifts and the family bank. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit as far as having that cash access for reinvesting into the company, perhaps?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because it really cuts to our business transition model. I mean, where do the kids get their money? They get it from us. So we would give our kids money, and then we would say, now remember, our business is for sale, and here's the current share price based on a third-party valuation. Would you like to become a stockholder? And don't tell us you don't have any money, because we just gave you some. Folks, follow the money. It never lies. If they don't return the money, if they take that money and they pursue other investment opportunities or they consume it, that is informing larger estate planning and business succession planning decisions that you need to make. these family meetings are powerful for informing families about what kind of children you have and how will they deal with sudden wealth. What I know is that if you've watched documentaries on sudden wealth, on lottery winners, and the destruction that takes place inside those families where there's been all of a sudden, right out of the blue, massive wealth, that is the inheritance market right now. If we do not have a close, deep connection to how that wealth was created and what the expectations are for taking that wealth and deploying it in a responsible way, we are doing a massive disservice to our children. And we are going to cause inordinate amount of damage. And I was reminded of this. I was doing a farm convention, and a farmer told me a story. I was signing his book. And he told me a story about how his father skipped over top of him and left a $10,000 gift to his son and was dead 30 days later because of an addiction that the grandfather was unaware of. Inherited wealth will release potential or it will accelerate demise. It will do one or the other. And as parents, as business owners, as wealth creators, we have a profound duty and responsibility to explore what kind of family members we have. This is new for first-generation wealth creators, but it's important. And if you've got some concern in your family around the spending habits of your son's wife, you've got concerns around substance abuse, you've got concerns around marital breakdowns. Look, there's a lot of stuff going on in the modern family. Lean on your advisors. They're smart. You don't think they've seen that movie before? There is all sorts of solutions that they can implement, including the use of trusts. I'm going to give you a shortcut. I say the word trust, I can see people's eyes roll into the back of their head like, oh my, it's just like, that's just advanced stuff. Let me give you a shortcut. You got something going on in your family? You're a little bit concerned about your son-in-law? There's a little bit of a lack of trust? You got some concern about your daughter-in-law? Some concern, a little lack of trust in how they're going to deal with your money? You got something going, you're concerned about your kids' ability, their marriage to survive? You got a lack of trust? There's a good case to be made for the use of Yeah, we call things the absolute opposite of what they are. Where there's a lack of trust, we probably need a trust. Shortcut. No charge. There's a lot going on in families. To pretend that there isn't, that it'll just magically go away when we're not here, we're just kicking the can down the road. Right now, the litigation lawyers in the room will tell you that the courts are full. The lawyers are mopping the floor. When I say lawyer, I want to be very specific. I'm not talking about lawyers that do estate planning documents. I'm talking about the litigation department down the hall. There's one piece of data in The Happy Inheritor, the third book in my trilogy, and that is, I couldn't find this number. I had to build this number. I had to do the research. That number is $500,000 per person to get to a one-day trial in a dispute between a brother and sister, two brothers, a family member, over their parents' estate, family business. You got 4 kids, you got 5 lawyers. The estate's got a lawyer. It gets better. 500,000 times 5. Do the math. Oh, yeah. No, we can do better. Or you could spend, $5,000, get a good facilitated meeting and have a nice dinner. Enjoy your company. Build a plan collaboratively, transparently. Get everyone at the table. Get their input. Better decisions are probably going to flow from a broader conversation with more people's input. I love that movie. All of us, we can do this. How we transition our wealth is more important than what we transition. Trust me. I think I'm running out of time. I do want to remind people that I do have some time before I have to catch a flight. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to sign some books. And just a quick reminder, a signed copy could be worth $27 someday. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.